The day after Grandpa's funeral, I pulled into the driveway and knew I wasn't walking back into a home. I was walking into a statement. My suit jacket was still folded on the passenger seat, smelling faintly like lilies and church air. My eyes felt sandpaper dry from a night of pretending I was fine in front of people who only showed up when there was something to collect. And there, on the curb, were my things. Black trash bags, a cardboard box half collapsed, my framed photo of Grandpa and me, glass cracked, picture warped like someone stepped on it with intention. A pair of my shoes tossed sideways as if they were offended to exist on that property. The front door was shut, and the lock was new. Not rekeyed. New metal, bright and untouched, the kind of shiny that looks proud of itself. Across the yard, my mother stood with her arms folded like she was supervising a delivery. My father leaned against his car, calm, satisfied, and my sister, Celia, was on the porch like she'd always belonged there, holding a coffee mug like this was a morning routine. They didn't look like mourners. They looked like owners. I got out of the car slowly, letting the door close with a soft click so no one could accuse me of slamming anything. My heartbeat was loud in my ears, but my face stayed still. If you've lived with people like this long enough, you learn that emotion is currency, and they will spend yours if you hand it to them. I walked toward the bags. My mother smiled, small and sharp. "Oh," she said, like she was pleasantly surprised I came back. "You're here." I didn't answer. I picked up the cracked frame and wiped glass dust off my thumb. My sister sipped her coffee and watched me like entertainment. My father spoke first, voice low and firm. "Keys?" I looked up at him. "What?" He nodded toward the door. "Hand them over. You don't live here anymore." My throat tightened, but I kept my voice level. This was Grandpa's house. My mother stepped closer, eyes bright with something almost gleeful. "And Grandpa is gone," she said. "So the temporary arrangement is over." Temporary arrangement. That's what they called the months I spent driving him to chemo, organizing his pills, cleaning his kitchen after he couldn't stand long enough to do it himself. That's what they called me sleeping on a pull-out couch because he didn't want to be alone at night. Temporary, like I was a guest. Like I hadn't been the one who actually showed up. Celia leaned against the porch rail, smiling. "You should have planned better," she said. "Did you think you'd just keep it?" I didn't look at her for long. Looking at Celia too long always made me feel like I was staring into a mirror that hated me back. My mother lowered her voice and leaned in, close enough that her perfume hit the back of my throat. "Hope you enjoy being homeless," she whispered, smiling like a secret. "Because we made sure you get nothing." Then she straightened and said it louder for the neighborhood, for witnesses, for the version of the story she wanted to plant before I even spoke. "It's time for you to move on," she announced, as if this was healthy and mutual. "We're not doing a scene." My hands were cold around the edge of the trash bag. I kept my posture controlled. "I'm not doing a scene," I said. My father held out his palm, impatient. "Keys now." I reached into my purse and pulled out my keyring, not because I was submitting, because I was documenting. I held it up where they could see it, then I set it down gently on top of the box like it was a piece of evidence I was placing into the open. I didn't toss it. I didn't shove it at him. I didn't give them a moment they could describe as aggressive. My mother's smile widened anyway. "Thank you," she said sweetly. Then she turned to the side and waved. And that's when I saw the police. Cruiser. Parked half a house down, lights off, engine idling. An officer stood near the driver's side, watching us with that careful, neutral face cops wear when they know they're walking into family poison. My stomach dropped. Not because I was guilty, because I understood the play. They didn't just change the locks, they called the police to make it official, to make me look like the intruder. The officer approached slowly, hand resting near his belt, calm posture. "Ma'am," he said to me, "are you the one who was staying here?" "I live here," my mother cut in smoothly. It's our family home. She was only here temporarily. We've asked her to leave peacefully. Celia nodded dramatically like she'd been scared. She's unstable, she added casually, as if she was describing the weather. The officer looked at me. Is that true? He asked. Were you asked to leave? I could feel my pulse in my fingertips, but my voice stayed steady. I was asked yesterday, I said. The day after a funeral. The officer glanced at my bags, then at the new lock. Do you have a lease? He asked. No, I said. It's my grandfather's house. I moved in to care for him. My father's voice was hard. He's dead, he said, and the will is handled. Handled. My mother's eyes locked on mine like she was daring me to fight. We already took care of everything, she said brightly. The lawyer knows. The will reading is just a formality. Celia smiled. You can show up if you want, she said. Just to watch us celebrate. The officer's gaze moved between us, reading the tension like it was a language he hated. Ma'am, he said to me, this is a civil matter. But if the homeowners are asking you to leave and you're not on the lease, you can't force entry. My mother's mouth lifted again. Satisfied. I nodded once. I understand, I said, because I did. If I fought here on the curb, they'd win twice. They'd keep the house and they'd keep the narrative. So I picked up the 2 bags I could carry and placed them in my trunk slowly, methodically, while my mother watched like she was finally watching me learn my place. Before I closed the trunk, I turned slightly and met my mother's eyes. You said the will is handled, I said calmly. Who told you that? My father scoffed. Our attorney. Celia laughed under her breath. You're not in it, she said. Don't make it weird. I didn't argue, I just nodded again. Okay, I said. Then I'll be at the will reading. My mother's smile sharpened. Go ahead, she said. It'll be good for you to hear it out loud. The officer shifted uncomfortably, like even he knew this was cruelty dressed as procedure. I got in my car and drove away, hands steady on the wheel, eyes dry but burning. I didn't know where I was going yet, hotel, friend, anywhere, but I knew what I was doing next. I was going to that will reading, not to beg, not to plead, to watch them say I was nothing, and then to see what Grandpa left behind that they were so sure didn't exist. Because Grandpa was the only person who ever looked at my family and saw them clearly. And the last thing he said to me in the hospital, voice thin, hand cold in mine, wasn't, I love you. It was, don't let them touch the papers. I remembered that sentence as I pulled into the lawyer's office parking lot the next morning, wearing the same black clothes from the funeral, my bag still in my trunk like proof of what they'd done. Inside the building, my parents and Celia were already there, smiling, laughing quietly, like the last 24 hours had been a celebration. Then the attorney opened the conference room door, looked at all of us and said, before we begin, there's one final section your grandfather insisted I read in full. The attorney didn't start with sympathy. He started with procedure. He waited until the conference room door clicked shut. Then he looked around the table like he was taking inventory of everyone's confidence. My parents sat shoulder to shoulder, polished and smug. My sister Celia had her chin lifted like she'd already won something she didn't earn. My mother even had a folder in front of her, blank paper inside, just for the performance. The attorney placed a thick file on the table, then set a sealed envelope beside it, cream paper, red wax stamp, and 2 signatures crossing the flap like a warning. He didn't look at them when he spoke. He looked at me. Jade, he said calmly, I'm Elliot Grant. I represented your grandfather. I'm sorry for your loss. My mother let out a soft, impatient sigh like grief was wasting her time. Mr. Grant slid his chair back slightly. Before we read the will, I need to make one thing clear, he said. Your grandfather left written instructions that this meeting must happen with all of you present, in one room, at one time. Celia smirked. Great, she said. Then read it. Let's end this. Mr. Grant didn't react to her tone. He opened the file, removed a sheet, and placed it flat on the table where everyone could see. This is a receipt for a sealed delivery, he said. Delivered to my office at 6:15 this morning. Courier signature, timestamp, chain of custody ID. My father frowned. From who? From a private safe deposit service your grandfather used, Mr. Grant replied. He scheduled it months ago. Celia's smirk tightened. He's dead, she said. He can't schedule anything. Mr. Grant's eyes lifted to her, cool and measured. People schedule things for after they die all the time, Heon, he said. That's the entire point of my job. My mother leaned back, smiling like she still believed she had control. We already handled everything, she said. We just came to hear it out loud. Mr. Grant nodded as if he'd expected that line. Then he tapped the sealed envelope with 2 fingers. This envelope, he said, is not a courtesy, it's a directive. He paused just long enough for the room to quiet. Your grandfather instructed me to read this first, he said. Before the will, before any distribution, before anyone says the word inheritance. Celia laughed once. Why would he do that? Mr. Grant didn't answer her. He broke the wax seal carefully like he was opening evidence, not paper. Inside was a single page, typed, signed, and notarized. He began reading in your grandfather's voice without imitating him, just letting the words do what they were built to do. If you are hearing this, Mr. Grant read, it means my funeral has ended and the masks have come off. It also means Jade has been pressured, cornered, or removed from my home. My mother's smile flickered. Mr. Grant kept going. My home is not to be treated as a prize, and Jade is not to be treated as disposable. If you have changed locks, removed keys, or called police to force her out, you have confirmed every concern I documented. Celia shifted in her chair. My father's jaw tightened. This is ridiculous, he muttered. Mr. Grant didn't look up. Your grandfather anticipated your reaction, he said, and continued reading. At the time of my death, the house is no longer held in my personal name, and it is not in the family name in the way you assume. It has been transferred into a trust with protections that cannot be undone by intimidation, false claims, or forged paperwork. My mother sat forward. What trust? She snapped. Mr. Grant stopped reading and looked at her directly. The Mercer Protective Trust, he said. Executed and recorded. The room went quiet in a different way. Less theatrical, more real. My father scoffed, but it sounded strained now. Recorded where? Mr. Grant opened a second folder and turned a sheet toward them. A certified recorder's page with a timestamp and instrument number. I pulled this from county records this morning, he said. The deed transfer into the trust was recorded 2 weeks before Walter passed. My sister's face tightened. That's impossible. Mr. Grant's voice stayed flat. It's not impossible when it's already on file. My mother's eyes darted to me. He wouldn't, she whispered, like she was trying to convince herself more than anyone else. Mr. Grant continued, calm as stone. The trust names one trustee, he said, and slid another page forward. I saw my name before he said it. Jade Mercer, he read out loud. Celia's chair scraped. No, she snapped. That's not... Mr. Grant lifted a hand. Not aggressive. Final. Sit down, he said. Celia froze, then slowly sat back, eyes burning. My father leaned forward, voice hard. So you're saying she owns it? Mr. Grant corrected him immediately. I'm saying the trust owns it, he replied, and she controls it as trustee. That means no one can sell it, borrow against it, or transfer it without her authority. It also means Changing the locks to remove her is, at minimum, an unlawful lockout, potentially criminal depending on what was taken. My mother's face flushed. She was living there temporarily. Mr. Grant's eyes narrowed slightly. Then explain why Walter wrote this, he said, tapping the letter. He documented caregiving. He documented expenses. He documented threats. My throat tightened. I kept my hand still. Mr. Grant flipped to the next page. Walter maintained an expense ledger, he said. Repairs, taxes, medical transport, home safety modifications. Oh, he kept copies of receipts. He also kept copies of Jade's payments. My father laughed sharply. She paid nothing. Mr. Grant turned his laptop toward them and clicked once. Scanned receipt appeared. Contractor invoice for a roof repair, paid by me. Another, property tax receipt, paid by me. Another, plumbing emergency, paid by me. My mother's mouth opened, then closed. Celia stared at the screen like it had personally insulted her. Mr. Grant didn't gloat. He didn't raise his voice. He just added the next weight. Walter instructed that Jade be reimbursed from a separate account for documented expenses, he said. The account has been active for years. It is not part of the ordinary probate estate. It is held under the trust. My sister's voice came out tight. How much? Mr. Grant's gaze stayed on the file. We're not there yet, he said. That's when my mother tried to take back the room the way she always did, by turning it into a moral courtroom. So she gets the house, she said loudly, gesturing toward me. After we raised her, after everything we did. Mr. Grant looked at her with something that wasn't anger. It was disgust disguised as professionalism. Ma'am, he said, I'm not here to litigate your feelings. I'm here to execute your father's documents. My father's voice dropped, dangerous and quiet. Then execute the will. We're done listening to this. Mr. Grant nodded once. We will, he said. But understand this. The will is not the only document Walter left. He left a trust, a letter of instruction, and a sealed inventory packet. He lifted a second sealed envelope from the file. Thicker, heavier, with a different stamp. Celia leaned forward instinctively like she wanted to snatch it. Mr. Grant moved it slightly farther from her hand without making a show of it. This envelope contains the list of items in a secure safe, he said. Documents, originals, digital media, and a set of recorded logs. My mother's voice sharpened. Where is this safe? Mr. Grant's eyes flicked to me again. That depends, he said. I felt my pulse in my throat. Mr. Grant continued. Walter wrote that no one is to access the safe except the trustee. He also wrote that if anyone attempted to remove Jade from the home within 48 hours of the funeral, I am to contact the county and file an emergency notice to lock the title record. My father went still. Lock the record. Mr. Grant nodded. It's already in motion, he said. Celia's face drained. You already... I followed my client's written instructions, Mr. Grant replied. That includes notifying the county to place a protective flag on the property file. It also includes a notice to the probate court regarding potential interference. My mother's knees shifted under the table like she'd suddenly remembered the curb, the bags, the police car. And one more thing, Mr. Grant added, voice calm but cutting. Walter also instructed that if anyone presented a power of attorney, incapacity claim, or attempted to move assets in his final months, the documentation be compiled and forwarded to the appropriate authorities. My father's jaw flexed. Authorities? Mr. Grant didn't blink. Yes, he said, because what you call family business can also be elder exploitation. The room fell silent in a way that felt heavier than sound. Then Mr. Grant opened the will file again and placed his finger at the top of the first page. Now, he said, we can begin the will reading, but understand. The house, the trust protections, and the sealed safe inventory are already separate from what you think you're here to take. He looked at Celia. Then my parents, then me. And the next section, he said, is where your grandfather explains exactly why. Mr. Grant didn't let my mother's indignation swell into a speech. He turned one page in the will file, then placed his hand flat over it, as if he needed the room to understand this wasn't conversation anymore. It was execution. Walter wrote a statement of intent, he said. He insisted it be read aloud, word for word. My father scoffed like the sentence offended him. Celia rolled her eyes with the kind of lazy contempt people use when they're sure the law's on their side. Mr. Grant didn't react. He just began. My children will claim they are entitled because they are blood, he read. They will claim Jade is weak because she is alone. They will claim Celia deserves more because she is loud. None of that is truth. Truth is what can be proven. My mother's smile tightened. Mr. Grant continued, voice steady. In my final months, I was pressured to sign documents I did not request. I was presented with forms while medicated. I was told Jade was taking advantage of me when she was the only one taking me to appointments. When I refused, I was threatened with guardianship. Celia laughed once, sharp. We never threatened him. Mr. Grant didn't look up. He just slid a paper out from the file and set it on the table. A printed email. He turned it so everyone could see the header. This is an email sent from your mother to Dr. Sunil Patel, he said. Subject line, capacity evaluation request. Sent 6 weeks before Walter died. My mother's cheeks flushed. That's private. It's in my client's legal file, Mr. Grant said calmly. And it includes an attachment. He tapped the second page, a typed draft labeled, Petition for Emergency Guardianship. The words on the top line made my stomach clench because they were written like a death sentence. Respondent, Walter Mercer. Allegation, incapacity and undue influence by granddaughter. My father's chair shifted. Celia went still in a way she couldn't hide. Mr. Grant kept reading as if their silence was just punctuation. I have kept copies of everything, he read, because people who believe they are entitled will always accuse you of hiding. So I hid nothing. I documented. He paused and set the letter down. Then he opened the second sealed envelope, the thicker one he'd mentioned, and pulled out a single page titled Safe Inventory. Do not open without trustee present. This, he said, is the list of items contained in Walter's secure safe. The safe is not in the house. It is in a private vault service. The access code is split into 2 parts. My mother leaned forward, voice sharp. Where is it? Mr. Grant's eyes didn't leave the paper. He wrote that I am to hold one part, he said, and Jade holds the other. Celia's head snapped toward me. You don't have anything, she hissed. I didn't answer her. I didn't even look at her long enough to feed it. Mr. Grant read the first line of the inventory. Item 1, he said. Original trust deed and certified recorder copies. My father's jaw flexed. Item 2, Mr. Grant continued. A ledger of caregiving expenses with matching, receipts, and bank statements. My mother scoffed, but it sounded thin now. Item 3, he said, and his voice shifted slightly, not louder, just heavier. A folder labeled Attempts. Celia let out a nervous laugh. That could mean anything. Mr. Grant looked up for the first time in a while. It means what it says, he replied. Then he read the sub-items under that folder, and with each one, the room tightened like a wire being pulled. A drafted power of attorney naming Celia as agent, he read. Unsigned by Walter. My sister's breath hitched. That's not illegal. A second drafted power of attorney naming Elaine and Robert as agents, he continued. Also unsigned. My mother swallowed. Bank call logs, Mr. Grant said. including recordings requested through compliance from numbers associated with Elaine and Celia, attempting to change beneficiary designations. My father's voice rose. We were trying to help him. Mr. Grant didn't argue. He just reached into the file and slid a page toward him. A bank notice with a compliance stamp. Attempted beneficiary change rejected. It read in clean language, and beneath it, reason. Suspicious request during reported medical incapacity. The word suspicious sat on the paper like a bruise. Mr. Grant kept reading the safe inventory. Notary journal copies tied to Holt Notary Services, he said, including a certificate Walter demanded be investigated. Celia's face drained so quickly it looked like someone pulled a plug. My mother tried to recover with volume. This is ridiculous, she snapped. You're letting her poison his memory. Mr. Grant set the inventory down and folded his hands. Ma'am, he said, your father anticipated that exact sentence. He included evidence because he knew you would claim emotion when confronted with records. Then he turned his laptop toward the table and opened a file labeled only by a date. This is a video, he said. From the assisted living facility? Walter legally requested copies. My father leaned back. He wasn't in assisted living. Mr. Grant's gaze stayed cold. He was for 3 weeks, he said, when you convinced the intake nurse that Jade was too unstable to be a visitor. My throat tightened, but I didn't interrupt. I remembered that week. I remembered being told to come back tomorrow. I remembered leaving messages that never returned. I remembered the smell of disinfectant and the way my hands shook on the steering wheel because I knew something was wrong but couldn't prove it. Mr. Grant clicked play. The video showed a hallway, fluorescent light, grainy security camera angle. A man in a wheelchair, my grandfather, being pushed slowly by a staff member. Then my mother stepped into frame. She leaned down close to his face, too close. Her mouth moved fast. Her hand pressed a stack of papers against his lap. My stomach turned cold because I could read her body language even without hearing the words. Pressure, hurry, now. A staff member approached and my mother's smile appeared instantly. Bright, innocent. Mr. Grant paused the video and zoomed in. The papers were visible enough to identify the header. Durable power of attorney. The room went silent in the way it does when people see something they can't talk their way out of. Celia tried anyway. You're twisting it, she said, voice too loud. He wanted us to help him. Mr. Grant didn't raise his voice. He simply clicked a different tab. Audio. A transcript line appeared beneath the video. Facility staff had recorded the interaction. Mr. Grant read aloud. Elaine Mercer stated, "If you don't sign today, Jade will take everything, and you'll die alone." My mother's face changed so fast it looked like pain. "That's a lie," she whispered. Mr. Grant didn't respond to the denial. He just read the next line. Walter Mercer responded, "Get away from me." Then he looked at my father. "Mr. Mercer," he said, "Walter also asked me to retain copies of messages sent to him in his final months. There are several from your number and Celia's number referencing declaring him incompetent and getting a judge to sign off." My father's hands clenched on the table. Celia's eyes darted. Anywhere except the screen. Mr. Grant turned another page in the will file and finally began reading the distributions, but he did it in a way that made it clear the money was almost secondary to the protections. Walter's residuary estate, he read, pours into the Mercer Protective Trust. My mother's voice cracked with anger. "So we get nothing." Mr. Grant didn't answer that directly. He read the next line instead. "The trust authorizes the trustee to reimburse Jade for documented expenses and to fund her housing stability, education, and legal protection against interference." Celia's laugh came out ugly. "Legal protection?" Mr. Grant nodded once. "Yes," he said, "because Walter anticipated litigation and harassment." My father slammed his palm lightly, not hard enough to be dramatic, just enough to try to reassert dominance. "This is her doing," he said, pointing at me. "She manipulated him." Mr. Grant's eyes narrowed. "If you believe that," he said, "then you'll be pleased to know Walter prepared for that accusation too." He reached into the file and removed a medical report. "Capacity evaluation," he said, sliding it forward. "Conducted 2 weeks before the trust transfer. Independent physician. Signed under penalty of perjury." My mother stared at the page like it was poison. Mr. Grant continued, calm and relentless. "And now," he said, "we reach the section your family insisted was already handled." He opened a new envelope from his file, different from the safe inventory, thinner, with a court seal. "This was filed with the probate court this morning," he said. "It's a notice of interference and a request for protective orders. It includes the lockout incident reported yesterday and the police involvement." My stomach tightened. I hadn't even told him about the police cruiser. He already knew, because Grandpa predicted it. Celia's voice dropped. "You filed that against us?" Mr. Grant's gaze held steady. "I followed written instruction," he said. "And because the safe inventory includes evidence of attempted elder exploitation, I also sent a preliminary referral to the district attorney's office for review." My mother's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then the conference room door opened. A woman in business attire stepped in, court runner, clipboard in hand, and looked at Mr. Grant. "I have service packets," she said quietly. Mr. Grant nodded. "Thank you," he replied. She set 3 envelopes on the table, one in front of my mother, one in front of my father, one in front of Celia, each stamped and sealed. My sister stared at hers like it was a live animal. Mr. Grant didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He simply placed his finger on the next page of the will. "And now," he said, "we get to the final section. Walter's instructions for what happens if any of you try to contest, intimidate, or retaliate after today." Celia didn't open her service packet like it was paper. She opened it like it was a trap. Her nails caught the edge of the envelope, tore it too hard, and a few pages slid out onto the table. She snatched them up fast, eyes scanning for the one sentence that would let her stay smug. My mother read hers first, lips moving, breath tightening. My father's face went stiff in that slow way men get when they realize yelling won't fix what's written. Then my mother looked up, voice sharp and trembling with outrage. "A protective order?" she snapped. "Against me?" Mr. Grant didn't blink. "It's a request for an emergency order," he corrected. "Based on the lockout, the police call, and the documented interference attempts. The court will decide." Celia shoved her pages toward him. "This says no contact," she hissed. "This says we can't go near the house." "Correct," Mr. Grant said calmly. "If the judge grants it." My father slapped his packet down. Not hard, just loud enough to try to reclaim the room. "You filed this without telling us," he said. "I filed it because Walter told me to," Mr. Grant replied, and tapped the signed instruction letter again. "And because you confirmed the risk within 24 hours. My mother's voice rose. "We changed the locks because she's not mentally well," she said, louder now, like she wanted the walls to testify. "She's unstable, she clings. She imagines things." Mr. Grant's eyes lifted slowly. "Ma'am," he said, "you attempted to have your father declared incompetent while he was alert and documented. If anyone here has a pattern of imagining things for legal leverage, it's not Jade." Celia leaned forward, face hot with anger. "This is because you're on her side," she spat. "You've been on her side since Grandpa got sick." Mr. Grant didn't defend himself. He did something worse. He slid another printed page onto the table. A log. Columns, timestamps, a list of phone numbers and call outcomes. "This is from Walter's assisted living facility," he said. "Visitor and contact log? You'll notice something." My mother's eyes flicked over it fast. "What is this?" Mr. Grant tapped 3 entries, neatly highlighted. Jade was denied access 3 times, he said, by instruction. And the instructing party was listed as... He didn't say my mother's name. He just let the log do it. Elaine Mercer. My mother's face flushed. He didn't want her. There, she snapped. That's not what staff documented, Mr. Grant replied. They documented that Walter requested Jade and you overrode it. Celia's mouth opened, then closed. My father stared at the table like it might crack and swallow this whole meeting if he glared hard enough. Then Celia did what she always did when she felt power slipping. She attacked the only thing she believed could still work. Me. You were squatting, she said, pointing at me. You were living off him. You were using him. I kept my hand still. I looked at her once. Calm. I was bathing him, I said. I was driving him. I was paying the bills you ignored. Celia laughed, ugly and loud. You're a liar. Mr. Grant clicked his pen once. Quiet, precise. Then it should be easy for you to prove, he said. My father turned on him. We're contesting, he said. We'll contest everything. Trust, will, all of it. Mr. Grant didn't flinch. You can file what you want, he said. But your father anticipated that too. He opened the will again and turned to a section he'd marked with a small tab. This is the no contest provision, he said. It's not a threat. It's a condition. My mother scoffed. No contest clauses don't work. They work enough, Mr. Grant replied, especially when combined with contemporaneous medical capacity evaluations and documented interference. He slid the medical report forward again. Signature, date, language so clinical it felt like ice. Walter's capacity was evaluated, he said, and he recorded the trust transfer before he deteriorated. If you want a contest, you will be contesting against a clean record. Celia's eyes narrowed. So what? She snapped. We get nothing either way? Mr. Grant didn't answer that directly. He reached for a different folder, one labeled with a simple word, taxes. Inside was a copy of the most recent property tax bill, highlighted in yellow, and beneath it, a receipt showing it was paid. By me. My father stared at it. Why are you showing that? Because Walter instructed me to, Mr. Grant said. And because the trust includes reimbursement provisions. My mother's voice turned acidic. Reimbursement, she said. So she gets paid for pretending to care. Mr. Grant looked at her with steady disgust. She gets reimbursed for documented expenses, he said. And you get the consequence of calling her an encosto while she kept your father alive. Celia's chair scraped as she stood abruptly. This is insane, she snapped. We're leaving. Mr. Grant didn't stop her. He just said one sentence that froze her mid-step. If you leave before the will is read, you'll still be served, he said. And your father's final section will still be filed with the court. Celia stayed standing, jaw tight. My father leaned in, voice low and dangerous. Give us the safe location, he said. We'll handle it ourselves. Mr. Grant's eyes didn't move. No, he said. The safe is controlled by the trustee. That's Jade. My mother's lips trembled with fury. So you're handing her everything. I'm handing her nothing, Mr. Grant replied. Walter did, in writing. Then my mother did something small and desperate. She pulled out her phone under the table and started typing. I recognized the movement immediately, the quiet call for backup. Mr. Grant saw it too. If you're calling your attorney, he said calmly, tell them to hurry, because we're not pausing this reading for theatrics. My father's face hardened. We have an attorney, he said, and he'll shut this down. Mr. Grant nodded once. He can try. Celia finally sat back down, not because she calmed down, because she realized leaving would mean losing access to information. And Celia doesn't walk away from a chance to grab something. 2 minutes later, the conference room door opened without a knock. A man stepped in wearing a tailored suit and a smile that didn't belong in grief. He carried a briefcase like a weapon and looked at me first, then at Mr. Grant. "Elliot," he said smoothly. "I'm Thomas Reeves, representing Elaine and Robert Mercer." My mother exhaled like salvation arrived. Mr. Reeves placed his briefcase on the table and opened it with confident hands. "We're requesting a delay," he said. "There are concerns of undue influence. My clients are prepared to file an emergency petition to freeze distribution." Mr. Grant folded his hands. "You can file," he said, "but you won't freeze what isn't in probate." Mr. Reeves smiled tightly. "The house is an estate asset." "It's not," Mr. Grant replied, and slid the certified recorder page toward him. "It's in trust." Mr. Reeves glanced down, just one glance, and his smile thinned. My mother leaned forward. "Tell him," she urged. "Tell him she's unstable. Tell him she manipulated Dad." Mr. Reeves lifted a hand, silencing her without looking. He turned to me, voice oily. "Jade," he said, "if you cooperate, we can resolve this privately. Sign over authority to administer the trust, and this doesn't become unpleasant." I didn't blink. I didn't respond to him like he was a person. I responded like he was a document. "No," I said. Mr. Reeves's smile sharpened. "Then we'll subpoena everything," he said. "We'll drag this out. We'll make sure you spend every dollar fighting." Mr. Grant spoke before I could. "Walter anticipated that too," he said. He pulled a final sheet from the file and placed it in front of Mr. Reeves. It was a letter addressed to District Attorney's Office with a date and a file reference number already assigned. Mr. Reeves's eyes flicked across it, quick and professional. Then his posture shifted, almost imperceptibly. Because a civil threat is one thing, a criminal referral is another. Mr. Grant's voice stayed calm. "You're welcome to contest," he said. "But understand, the safe inventory includes evidence of attempted guardianship manipulation, coercion during medication, and beneficiary interference. That's why the referral exists." Mr. Reeves tried to recover with arrogance. "Allegations," he said. Mr. Grant nodded once. "With records," he replied. My mother's face was now raw with rage. "You can't do this," she hissed. "You can't take our father's house away." Mr. Grant looked at her steadily. "He took it away from you," he said, "because you treated it like loot." Then he turned the page in the will again, slow and deliberate. "We're done with posturing," he said. "You came here to hear the will, now you will." Mr. Reeves opened his mouth, but Mr. Grant raised one finger. Not rude, just final. "One more interruption," Mr. Grant said quietly, "and I'll ask building security to remove you. This is a private reading under my control, and I have written instruction." Mr. Reeves's jaw flexed. He sat back, eyes hard, calculating. Mr. Grant looked down at the next section, then looked up at all of us. "This is the final section Walter demanded I read," he said. "It contains the trust accounting, the reimbursement totals, and the valuation of assets held for Jade's protection." My mother's eyes widened slightly. Celia's mouth parted without realizing it. And my father went very, very still. Mr. Grant placed his finger on the first line and said, "Now listen carefully." Mr. Grant didn't raise his voice when he started reading the valuation. He didn't need to. The words did the damage all by themselves. "Under the Mercer Protective Trust," he said, "the primary residence is held and managed for Jade Mercer's exclusive benefit. The trustee has sole authority, no family. No member may occupy, access, or alter the property without the trustee's written consent." My mother's mouth opened as if she could interrupt title law with breath. Mr. Grant kept going. "The trust also holds a brokerage account established by Walter Mercer and funded over time. He read, "It is not part of the probate estate. It passes outside of contest." Celia's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. Mr. Grant turned a page. "This is the accounting," he said. "And this is the reimbursement ledger." He read the line items with the same calm you'd use reading weather. Roof repair, property taxes, plumbing emergency, medical transport, home safety modifications, groceries during caregiving months, and, next to each one, a matching receipt and bank proof. Then he read the total. "Total documented expenses paid by Jade Mercer," he said, "to be reimbursed in full, $183,000. My father made a short choking sound, like his throat didn't know how to swallow that number. My mother snapped, "That's impossible." Mr. Grant didn't look at her. "It's documented," he replied and moved on. "Additionally," he continued, "Walter directed a stability reserve for Jade, housing security, legal defense against interference, and emergency funds, so she is never pressured into dependence again." He paused, then read the amount. $1 million, he said, flat and clean. The room didn't erupt. It didn't even breathe for a moment. My mother's face went blank in a way I'd never seen before, like her mind was trying to find a place to put reality and couldn't. Celia's voice came out thin. "That's not—" Mr. Grant cut her off with one glance. "It is," he said. Then he reached the part they had driven here to hear. The part my mother had promised would humiliate me. "The estimated valuation of trust-held assets," he read, "including the residence, brokerage holdings, and reserve accounts as of the date of Walter Mercer's death is—" He looked down once more, just to be precise. $3,460,000. My mother's knees actually buckled under the table. It wasn't dramatic at first. It was physical, like her body understood what her pride couldn't survive. She grabbed the table edge, eyes wide, lips parted, and then she made a small sound, half breath, half disbelief, and slid sideways in her chair. My father stood up so fast his chair hit the wall behind him. "Elaine?" he barked, suddenly terrified, not of her health, but of what this moment meant. Celia stared at my mother for one frozen second, then snapped her gaze to Mr. Grant like she could force him to retract numbers. "This is fraud," she hissed. This is her manipulating." Mr. Grant didn't even blink. He reached for his phone with the calm of someone who planned for this, too. "I'm calling building security and medical," he said evenly. "And I'm continuing when the room is stable." My mother's eyes fluttered, and then they rolled back. She fainted. No elegant collapse, no movie scene, just a woman who built her whole identity on ownership, losing it in one breath. The office staff rushed in. Someone brought water. Someone called for paramedics. My father knelt beside her, shaking her shoulder too hard, whispering her name like it was a spell that could undo what had just been read. Celia stood trembling with rage, and for a second I thought she was going to come at me. Not to talk, to blame. She took one step around the table, face twisted, and Mr. Reeves put an arm out without looking at her. "Don't," he muttered. Not for my sake, for hers, because now there were witnesses who weren't family, people who didn't care about her narrative. Mr. Grant waited until the room settled enough for him to be heard again. Then he looked at my father and Celia like a judge looks at defendants who still think charisma matters. "There is more," he said, "and it pertains to your choices." Celia spat, "We're contesting." Mr. Grant nodded once. "Then you should listen very carefully," he replied. "Because Walter included an enforcement instruction." He lifted the thick inventory envelope again, the one that had made them hungry an hour ago. Walter instructed that if any family member attempted to remove Jade from the residence, change locks, call police to force a lockout, or retaliate within 48 hours of his funeral, he said, "I am to do 3 things." He held up one finger. "First, notify the county recorder and place a protective flag on the property file to prevent fraudulent filings." He held up a second. Second, file for emergency protective orders to prevent further harassment and unauthorized entry. He held up a third. And third, deliver his evidence packet to the district attorney for review under elder exploitation, coercion, and fraud statutes. Mr. Reeves's posture changed at the third finger. His briefcase stopped looking like a weapon and started looking like a liability. My father's voice shook with anger. What evidence? Mr. Grant didn't answer with opinion. He answered with logistics. The safe, he said. The one you demanded access to. He opened the inventory sheet again. The safe contains a letter from Walter, he read. A complete ledger with originals, copies of attempted guardianship drafts, banking interference logs, facility visitor restriction records, and digital media. Then he looked directly at Celia. It also contains the security footage Walter ordered from the facility, he said, showing who brought papers during medication windows and who tried to isolate him from Jade. Celia's face drained to something gray. My mother stirred weakly on the carpet as paramedics arrived. She wasn't unconscious anymore, just hollow, staring up at the ceiling like it had betrayed her. Mr. Grant didn't soften. He didn't punish her with cruelty. He punished her with completion. He slid a small sealed envelope across the table toward me. This is your portion of the vault code, he said quietly. I will meet you there today with my half. Walter instructed that you access the safe immediately, secure the originals, and file anything needed to restore occupancy. My throat tightened. I nodded once. Okay. My father looked up from the floor, eyes blazing. You can't just take her back there, he snapped. The house is owned by the trust, Mr. Grant interrupted, voice flat. And she is the trustee. Celia's voice broke, sharp and ugly. You're stealing from us. Mr. Grant stared at her. No, he said. You tried to steal from him. Mr. Reeves cleared his throat like he wanted to rescue the day. Given the medical event, he said carefully, we'd like to postpone. Mr. Grant's gaze cut him off. You've been served, he said, and the record stands. The paramedics helped my mother sit up. She looked at me then, not with love, not with grief, with pure wounded hatred. You did this, she whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because she had done it to herself the moment she put my bags on the curb and smiled. 2 hours later, I sat in Mr. Grant's car outside a private vault service building while he checked in with a receptionist who didn't care who my parents were. We went through a series of locks and signatures, and then we stood in a small room with a steel door that opened like the end of a long tunnel. Inside the safe was exactly what Grandpa promised without ever bragging. A thick folder of originals, a flash drive sealed in plastic, a handwritten letter addressed to me, and a second packet already labeled with a case number. Mr. Grant hadn't been bluffing about the referral. I opened Grandpa's letter with hands that stayed steady even as my vision blurred. It was short. His handwriting was shaky but clear. If they did this to you, it means I was right to protect you. Don't argue with them. Don't negotiate. Let the records speak. I'm sorry I couldn't give you a kinder family, but I can give you a safer future. I didn't cry in the vault. I just breathed, slow and controlled, and felt something in my chest unclench for the first time since I saw my bags on that curb. That evening, Mr. Grant filed the emergency order that restored my access to the house. A deputy stood by while I changed the locks back and documented the condition of everything. My parents didn't come near me. They couldn't, not legally. Within weeks, the district attorney opened a formal investigation based on Grandpa's packet. My mother and father were questioned about the guardianship drafts and the facility restriction. Celia was questioned about the bank interference attempts and the intimidation texts that were printed and preserved. They didn't get to call it family drama anymore. It became what it was. A fraud attempt wrapped in grief. My mother and father were hit with protective orders and civil penalties tied to the unlawful lockout. Celia faced felony charges connected to the forged paperwork attempts and interference because drafts were only the beginning, and Grandpa's evidence showed how far she'd already pushed. Restitution was ordered. Contact was restricted. And for the first time in my life, their consequences weren't social, they were legal. A month later, the house felt like mine again. Not because the paint was perfect or the memories were gentle, but because the record was locked. The trust protections were in place, and the people who treated me like disposable couldn't reach me without stepping into a courtroom. I still missed Grandpa in ways I couldn't explain, but I stopped feeling like I'd been left defenseless. He didn't just leave me property. He left me proof. If your own parents threw you out the day after a funeral, would you ever let them back in after seeing what they were willing to do for money? Tell me in the comments. And if you want the next story, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.